Hello everybody and welcome to today's video, the first video of 2023. I hope you all had a really wonderful Christmas and New Year's, however you celebrate it. I hope you had a chance to rest and recover because 2022 was a pretty hellish year for a lot of people. And I'm certainly hoping that 2023 is a bigger and better year for everybody. I did get a bit of a break myself over the Christmas, which was nice. Unfortunately, I did catch COVID. So I spent some of it rolling around sick, but I did recover fine and then was able to spend some time watching movies and just generally relaxing, which is exactly what I needed. Last year was huge for digitally downloaded.net, and I have huge plans for this year as well. So I needed that bit of a break just to get everything ready. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Christmas and New Year's. We're here to talk about the first big game release of 2023. And it has come on quickly. Usually, developers and publishers do give you a bit of a grace period at the start of the year. They don't try to release anything big in January. There's a couple of smaller releases, and certainly they'll make some announcements about what's coming in the year ahead. But usually, you're not getting kind of Game of the Year contenders in January. But this year is going to be different because I do think that Fire Emblem Engage, which is the newest Fire Emblem game, is going to be a big one for Nintendo. Preview embargo on it has lifted. I have been able to play through the first couple of chapters of the game. I've got a full preview on digitallydownloaded.net, which you can also check out. It's a pretty in-depth one, but spoiler-free. I haven't played beyond what the preview conditions have allowed, so I don't know the bulk of the game, but on the initial impressions, this is a very, very good game indeed. And I do think that particularly for Fire Emblem fans, it is going to be one that people appreciate. It does feel like it has been made for Fire Emblem fans first and foremost. And it's a bit of a love letter to the series as a result. Now, what I want to focus this video on is the fan service. And I don't mean fan service in terms of swimsuits and bikinis and things like that. There's a little bit of that in this game, although it must be said that previous Fire Emblem games have flirted with that kind of material much more strongly. This one feels relatively muted in terms of the visual fan service. But what it does do very strongly is focus players' attention on the best of characters of the series to date. If you've been playing Fire Emblem for as long as I have, which is all the way back to the first English release on the GBA, then you will recognize a lot of the characters that have been brought into this game, and they really do feel like they're the focus of it, that this is a celebration of these really beloved characters that is effectively fan service. That is what this game is there for. It is for the long-term fans first and foremost. So if you've been following the game, then you would know what I'm talking about, but I'll go through it for people who maybe are less familiar with it. There is a ring system in this game, which is kind of, I can't remember what the names of the rings are now off the top of my head, but what those rings do, each ring has an emblem attached to it, and those emblems allow you to summon heroes from games past into this one. So the very first ring you start with is Marth. So right from the very first level, you can summon Marth into the game, Marth being the hero of the very first Fire Emblem. As you go along, you start to unlock more of these rings. You get the likes of Lyn from the GBA Fire Emblem, Byleth from Three Houses, and a bunch of heroes in between. There are 12 rings in total, but that's only on the base game. One can assume that because it's quite easy to add more in via DLC, that is what Nintendo and Intelligent Systems will do. But you're on a quest. The bulk of the narrative is setting you on this quest to go and collect these 12 rings. And once you do so, you can attach the ring to one of the new characters, the protagonists of this new game, and then they can summon that hero into battle to assist them. Those heroes give you a stat boost for a time. You only get to use it for a certain amount of time, so you need to be strategic about when you activate those rings, but you do get a significant stat boost, and you also get some really spectacular attacks, which showcase the visual style of the game very nicely. So that is the focus. It is the kind of the gimmick as such. It's kind of the mechanical gimmick within the game. It's also the narrative focus of it. So you don't need to know who these characters are to play this game and understand the story. The story itself is set completely separate to all the previous games and has a completely separate set of characters protagonists and villains. So you don't need to have played the previous games. You can go through it, and if, for example, you don't know who Lynn is, then the character's just this kind of magic ring that you pick up that boosts one of your characters, and that's fine. You know, you're not missing out on anything as such. But if you do know who these characters are, the fact that you can interact with them between battles and have a chance to kind of get to know your favorite characters even more is a really compelling reason to play this. And it does feel like that is the intent of Intelligent Systems with this one, to reward people that have been playing through the series from those early days with a game that's kind of custom built for them. The mechanics of the game is also very much in that mold. So I felt that Three Houses, which was the last Fire Emblem released in 2019, was relatively experimental. It was an attempt to draw new fans into the series. It had that whole Harry Potter school experience thing going on, and the balance between combat and the non-combat stuff was kind of split, almost 50-50 at the time. And that was a way of it. You still obviously had to do the Fire Emblem combat bits, but you did have this whole other side of the game, which was designed to give people who are maybe not so familiar with Fire Emblem a chance to kind of get into it with an experience that was kind of universal. This game, on the other hand, at least as far as I've played, is much more in the mold of the older Fire Emblems, where you would have little visual novel segments, but they would be really bookends to the combat. And the focus was very much on going from one level to the next, one battle map to the next, meeting a few new characters in each battle map, and then moving on to the next battle map. There is a rest area that you can go to between battles, but it is nowhere near as kind of developed and comprehensive as the School of Three Houses, so you don't spend as much time there. You really are just kind of encouraged to go there, buy some new equipment, maybe chat to some of your favorite characters, develop their relationships. But then you're going back to the next battle. And in a way, or in a very significant way, it felt to me like I was playing the GameCube or Wii Fire Emblems around that kind of level of experience. And while the game is obviously much prettier than that and much more detailed in terms of the characters and the presentation of it all, it really felt like that to me, that I was back playing the GameCube Fire Emblem for the first time, having an absolutely wonderful time with it, and enjoying the characters from this series that I've been playing for so long at this point. The other way to look at it, I think, is a little bit like what Square did with the Final Fantasy series, where Final Fantasy 7 and 8, especially Final Fantasy 8, were very experimental efforts to push Final Fantasy in different directions and try some different things. And then Final Fantasy 9 became this kind of celebration callback to the series that a lot of people have been playing since the NES era. This one feels a little bit like that. The last couple of Fire Emblem games have been quite experimental. There has been a Fire Emblem Warriors, for example, Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I mentioned before, and even Tokyo Mirage Sessions Fire Emblem, which was a kind of a mashup between Atlas and the Fire Emblem series, but it still had the Fire Emblem elements in it. And it felt like, you know, those kinds of experiments were there, where this one is an attempt to bring it all back and kind of ground it back in the traditions that made people love Fire Emblem in the first place. So I don't know how this game will go with new players. I don't know if this is necessarily the Fire Emblem that I would recommend to people to play first. Like I said earlier in the video, you can play it. The narrative is perfectly self-contained, doesn't rely on any previous knowledge. But just because the fact of the matter is it is so focused on these traditional characters, or these characters from yesteryear, and on top of that, the way that the game plays is rooted in an older style of Fire Emblem, I feel like this one is much more for veterans. So I would still probably recommend people play Three Houses first. It's readily available on Switch, and you can. And if you like that, then perhaps look at giving this one a go. What kind of frustrates me, and I might do a separate video on this later on, is how limited you are if you want to catch up on Fire Emblem. Nintendo has done an absolutely appalling job of making these excellent games, each of which is self-contained and a worthy experience in its own right, available on the modern platform. On the Switch, you can only play Three Houses, the very first Fire Emblem, which they kind of translated as a kind of reward a couple of years ago, and now this one. And I do feel like that's missing an opportunity, because you could easily put the 3DS ones on there. You could easily put the GBA ones on there and give people a chance to experience these characters and stories for the first time. If you were able to do that, then I feel like Engage would be immediately so much more valuable to a lot more people, because the understanding of what Fire Emblem is would be greater. As it is, it's still a very fun game. I'm very much looking forward to writing the full review of it, and I'm certainly not going to be critical of it, because as a Fire Emblem fan, it feels like it has been made for me. But it is just something to be aware of. If you are not that experienced with Fire Emblem, maybe give Three Houses a go first before you commit to this one. Okay, so that's enough for this video. I am looking forward to people's thoughts as the game comes out and people start to talk about it. Like I said, I can't review it as yet because it is just in preview stage, but I am certainly going to be reviewing it once review embargo lifts, and I hope you will check that out. If you've enjoyed this video, please do hit that like and subscribe button. That way you will get all the videos as we do them. And if you want to support what we do here on digitallydownloaded.net, not just in terms of the videos, but in terms of the magazine that we produce, the website, which we update, every day and work very hard at. If you want to support what we do at DDNet, then please consider backing us on Patreon. You can do so for just $1 a month or more if you're feeling generous. And all of that money goes directly back into the website. So thanks very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts, and we will see you at the next one.